Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Dami. If you're seeing my face for the very first time, I live in Brisbane, Australia, and yeah, if you've not been watching my house series content, I've been filming about us buying a new house in Australia and things like that. And then if you're not following me on Instagram, I guess you're missing, because I put up a Q&A on Instagram a while ago to ask people what house content they want me to film about. And then I think several people asked about why we chose to build as against why we chose to buy as against building a house. And I think I got a lot of that question. So in today's video, I'm basically going to be going through the pros and the cons of either choosing to buy or to build a house. If this is something that interests you or you want to know more about, please stay tuned and keep watching. Welcome back. I'm going to start with buying a house because that is what we did. And please bear in mind, whatever I say now is based on my personal experience and the information I have gathered personally. Remember, buying or building a house is a lifelong investment. I even feel like that is one of the biggest investments you would ever make as a person. Especially in this part of the world, buying a house is the biggest investment. So ensure you invest enough time, money if required, in research, because you can afford to make mistakes. So whatever I say today is based on my own personal research and what I've gathered based on my own process. So we'll start with what the pros are for buying a house, because we bought a house, right? So one of the pros is that it is just convenient. Like, that's the number one pro. It is very convenient because you're looking at the house, you're not stressing about chasing a builder, knowing what the progress report is, and all of those things. We'll come to that like when we go to the cons of building, but it is just convenient. I need this house. You can say, oh, by December is even too far for buying a house. Let's say in the next 2 months I want to buy a house, and then you just start shopping around because the house is already built, right? You can just move in. So it is very, very convenient. Like, that's the main reason. The number two pro is the fact that there are no surprises. You know, when you're building and then along the way something happens, there's weather condition, then the builders are telling you they cannot progress this, or maybe there's scarcity of a material. When you're buying a house, you're buying it the way it is, right? You're going to see everything. Even one of the process you have to follow. If you've not seen my last video on the process of buying a house in Australia, I will link it up here. Please do well to check it out. So one of the things you're meant to do when you're buying is to do a building and pest inspection. So most times, if there's anything wrong with that property, they would advise you as part of that inspection, so you would know. So with buying, there's almost like 80% guarantee that there are no surprises. What you see is what you would get. The other one is the fact that it is somewhat cheaper depending on what you get. This one is depending, like, it depends on what you get, and then sometimes you can get a lower interest rate as well. So depending on what you choose to buy, you might get like lower interest rates, because from what I gathered as well, when you are building, it has a high interest rate compared to when you're buying a house outright. So this, again, you need to do your research and be sure you get your facts together before you proceed. Now that we're done with the pros, I'm going to be talking about what the cons of buying a already built house is. The very obvious one that we all know is the fact that wear and tear, like, these properties have been used by people depending. Another thing, I don't know if I mentioned it in the process of, like, in my last video about the process we went through to buy our house, but when we were buying, one of the things we had on our list of things we cannot compromise on is the number of years the house have been built. So I think my husband said maximum we can go was 5 years. We didn't want any house that have been built for a long time, 100 people have lived in. As much as we're not willing to be patient or to wait through the process of building, we could not sit it out. At the same time, we would had a maximum number of years we were willing to buy. So we're not checking houses that were over 6 years. That was one thing we could not compromise on. There were a lot of things we did compromise, but that particular one, if it's over 6 years, we didn't even go for inspection. So yeah, wear and tear, a lot of things might have fallen down, things might be broken, and then we're lucky the house we got was built in December 2019. Like, imagine, we bought our house in 2020 2022. No, sorry, it was built December 2021 and we bought it in 2022. So the house we bought was actually less than 1 year. Another thing for you to check out is check out houses that are used as display homes. I think that's the one trick I learned in the whole process. Most times when they build display homes, so if you don't know, display homes are houses that most of these builders would build and used to show people a sample when they want to build for them. So there's a point, like maybe if there's a new site, they will build a lot of display homes, and at some point they will sell it because they need to move to another new location. So check out display homes in all these new sites. So that's a trick. But yeah, like I said, the cons of buying a ready built house is wear and tear. Some of the blinds might be broken, like just a lot of things might have gone wrong as a result of usage, you know, if that makes sense. The con for buying a already built house is the fact that you don't get government grants. So in Australia there's a first homeowners grant, and that grant is, I think, 15,000. That's what I'm aware of. Please check. As at the last time I checked, it was $15,000 for houses that have never been lived in or new builds. So if you buy a display home, you're still guaranteed to get $15,000 because nobody has ever lived in that house. But again, that house must not be more than $750,000. But if you're buying a already built house, you cannot get this. Like, you don't even stand a chance, because is either they've not lived in it or is a new build, but then there's a 750,000. But if you're buying a house above 750, this is something you will not even get anyway. So don't stress it. But if you're buying a house less than 750, if it's new, or if it's new that nobody has lived in it, or if it's if you're building, you get 15,000. So another con is you're losing some money. Some coins is coming off the table if you're buying your already built house. So those are the things you should consider. And then finally would be, you don't have the opportunity to personalize your property. One thing I feel like I always say regularly in this house is, like, I really love this house. Like, it is everything, it ticks off the boxes. But one thing is we didn't have opportunity to personalize quite a few things that, like, we would have loved to. I think one thing for me about this particular property is the fact that there's no extra restroom. I still wish we had one more restroom. Like, we have two at the moment, which is fine for our family size, but whenever we have people around, it's almost like a struggle. So yeah, that's just one of the big cons of buying a already built house, because whoever built it before or bought it, who put this out together, built it to their own taste, right? And then we have a different family size, but then again would make it work, and we're still grateful. So yeah, those are the pros and cons of buying a already built house. So now let's go into what it is like building a house in Australia. So with building, let's go into the pros. The number one pros, of course, is personalization. So with building, you can easily, like, tell them, this is what I wanted, this is how I want this. Like, you can literally draw whatever you want out. And you know, when people are building and you know there's room for upgrades, oh, I want to upgrade this part of the house, I want to upgrade this, like, there's just a lot of room for you to do things to your taste and the way you want it. But when you're buying a house already built, of course you cannot change anything, except you want to start changing when you've already bought. And then there's even limits to what you can change. For instance, I mentioned earlier that I still need an extra restroom. I want it, but I don't even think it's something I want to dabble into, because where would they put it? Does it even make sense? Like, what's the whole process in getting a restroom in an already built house? Almost impossible. So yeah, so when you're building, you get the chance to personalize the house to what you want and how you want everything to be set up. So that's one of the number one pros for building. The number two one is you get the government grant, which is the first homeowners grant I mentioned earlier as well. You get the 15,000 on houses above below $750,000, but remember, the house must be new build or have never been occupied by anyone. So yeah, if you're building, you get that grant. The third one is stamp duty. So when you're buying a house in Australia, you have to pay stamp duty to the government. Depending on the state, the charges are different across board. But one thing that for sure is, when you are building, you're paying stamp duty on the cost of the land. So imagine you bought your land in this area is like maybe $200,000, $250,000. You're paying stamp duty on that cost only. But when you are building, right, you are paying stamp duty on the value of the property. So you're saving a whole lot of money. Like, it's not a lot, but it is something at the end of the day. So yeah, that's one of the pros of building a house. You're going to be paying lesser stamp duty, and then building overall is always cheaper. That's one thing we've realized. It is always cheaper because I don't know why it's cheaper, but maybe because the people who already built, like when you're buying an already built house, I don't even know. I don't know the math behind it, but maybe you're just paying for convenience by buying a already built house. But when you're building, it is always cheaper. If you go to realestate.com, for instance, and then check houses around you and check houses for sale, check a house that is land and house package, and check something similar, you will see that the one that they're going to build is cheaper. And I think maybe because it will take time, and maybe the builders are buying things in bulk. I don't know the maths behind it, to be honest, but building a house is cheaper than buying a house. So in a way, you're paying premium for convenience, like convenience, when you're buying a already built house, if that makes sense. So that's it. And then there are instances where a already built house is cheaper. Many instances, one for sure that I know is when, sometimes, not in all scenario, when it's a mortgage sale. For instance, the bank possess the property from a customer and they are selling. The bank is not in the business of making profit of the property, so the bank just wants to sell and get their money back. So if you get houses like that, sometimes, not every time, they are cheaper. And sometimes, if the seller is in desperate need of money, or maybe relocating out of the country, there are many reasons why a already built house might be cheaper. But in most cases, building a house from scratch is always cheaper. Okay, so now let's go to the cons of building a house. The number one reason why we chose not to go that route is just timing. Like, timing. See, there are people, I know that COVID highly impacted this side of things, because there are people who started building houses and 2 years down the line, their house was not ready. I know someone personally who started, like, who built, and then 1 year plus, like in January, I remember them saying they are signing, they bought their land, and then December, the house eventually, like, it took forever. And whereas we bought, we got our PR in August, right? Immediately that August, we started looking. In October, we were ready we bought our house, like, that kind of thing. Whereas some people that they are building, they will start from January to the whole year, some people even 2 years. So it's just the timing. So that's the number one con, and that's why a lot of people are currently not building. And if you are even in Australia at the moment, you'll know that a lot of building companies have collapsed because of COVID. They didn't get material supplies, price went up, and then they already signed contracts with customers to build at a certain amount, and then the prices of all these materials doubled up, so there was no way for them to be able to match their costs. So cost escalation went above and beyond. Businesses crumbled as a result of that. So now it is calming down, but it's still, and I feel it's still very risky to build, because you don't even know what the financials of the company looks like, how they recovered, or if they have recovered from the impact of the COVID cost escalation. So all of those things are things you would consider to think, do I really want to build, or do I want to buy? So with timing, and then also there's weather. If you're building, for instance, I remember there was someone who was building, and then I'm like, your house should be done by now, because based on the timeline you've shared with me. And she was like, oh, because the rain has been falling, there are certain things they cannot do. I'm like, gosh, there's just always something that was always coming up. So the weather also has an impact when you're building. In rainy season, it becomes really, really slow, and then you just have to be patient, because at the end of the day, you cannot hold the rain, or say the rain should not fall. So yeah, that's it. And then also land location. If you are building, like today I was chatting with certain ladies, and then we're talking about, oh, why didn't you buy something close to the city? If you are to build, most likely you will not find anything close to the city. You would find in inner suburbs, because most of the land around the city are already filled up, if that makes sense. But if you are buying a house, for instance, if you still check around the city, check somewhere around the south, if you live in Brisbane, like South Bank and all, you will still see something to buy. But if you need to build, I doubt you would find a land very close to the city. You still have to go into all the inner suburbs to buy a land and build. So yeah, land location is another cons of building. You won't find a good land. You won't find a land, like maybe you preferably may not find a land in your preferred location, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's that one on the land location. Another thing is the fact that, which is the final cons of building, is the fact that when you're building, you're paying higher interest rates. So if you check with your bank or your mortgage broker, you realize that the interest rate for building a house, which is construction, they'll call it construction, or buying, is different. So make sure you do your research on that one. And also the loan repayment. So if you're buying, remember the way the bank would disburse the loan initially. If you're building, sorry, the way the bank would disburse the loan is initially the cost of the land. So once they disburse it, you start repaying, and most times you're still living in a rented property, right? And then you're still paying your rent. So in a way, you are paying double, and it can put some sort of financial pressure on you, depending on what your budget, if you've really assessed your budget or not before that. So it might put some sort of financial pressure on you if it's not properly planned or managed. Because imagine you're paying rent and you're still paying, you're doing loan repayment, because once they disburse the loans for the land, you have to start paying back the installment, the monthly installment. So you just need to do your research. See, buying a house is not easy, and like I said at the beginning, is one of the biggest projects you would ever do. So do your research very well, do your due diligence, like I've always mentioned. I think that's everything, and those are the reasons. Like from now, like based on what I've said now, I'm sure you can also make a decision if you want to actually build or you want to buy a house in Australia. I hope that helps you, and if you have any questions, like always, please drop it in the comment section. And lest I forget, please, if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so before you leave. Give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.